I am suffering from a character crisis in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I want to give every character a chance at becoming my main. This week, I learned how to play Ike, and even though I struggled with him, by the end, I learned how to like Ike. If you like Ike too, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay tuned as I go through my character crisis. When Smash Bros. Ultimate came out 5 years ago, nobody knew what to expect. In this early metagame filled with broken characters and unpatched moves, the eventual GOAT of Ultimate would choose his first main. And he decided to go with a character very few people could have predicted. In every Smash game before Ultimate, Ike has had the misfortune of being a low tier. Except in Project M, where he's one of the sickest characters in the game. God, quick draw cancels are so cool. Anyways, MKLeo saw something in Ike, and decided to make him one of his mains, until Joker was released a couple months later. For those first few months, Ike was considered a meta threat, and was a character many top players had to be ready for. But after MKLeo dropped Ike, he slowly began to fall out of favor. In the first year, it wasn't uncommon to see Ike grouped with the top 20 characters in the game, but now, it's weird if he's not in the bottom 20. In Dabuz's most recent tier list, he even went so far as to say Ike was bottom 2. This is where I come in. There we go. Say it with me, chat. Ow. Say it with me, chat. We like Ike. I do not have a lot of experience playing Ike. I think that's pretty easy to tell from my gameplay. But I want to give every character a chance at becoming my main. Even the low tiers. Especially the low tiers. I struggled a lot with Ike at first. I was constantly getting gimped, I couldn't get in, and I was just generally frustrated with Ike and his shortcomings. That grab, I'm telling you, it's trash. I hate his stupid, stubby T-Rex arms. It's worse than Shulk. I hate to say it, but I did not like Ike. Do we like Ike? Only on Tuesdays. It just felt so easy to lose with him. I make one mistake off stage and it's over. Man, Ike dies so easily. But it wasn't all bad. There were some things about Ike that I really liked. Ike hits so hard. Oh yeah, ooh! Ike kills so easily though. His combos are simple, but satisfying. Yes! Ooh, I actually got that. Ike can juggle and edgeguard exceptionally well, because his moves are huge. But even with all of these things, I was terrible with him. It would be so easy to say Ike is bad because he's a low tier, and not try to get good with him because of it. But I knew I wasn't playing Ike to his full potential. The first night I mained him, I got to play some games with one of our local Ike mains. He showed me what an optimized Ike looked like, and I was getting blown up left and right. He thought about Ike and played him in a way no one else I knew really did. For one of the simplest characters in the game, I was surprised when he said he once spent a couple of hours just labbing out neutral air in training mode. At this point, I knew what had to be done. I entered training mode with Ike, and I started practicing. I studied him and his moves. I learned when things work and when they don't. I experimented and came up with different setups, and I even practiced how to recover safely. For the simplest character in the game, I was shocked by how much nuance there was in Ike's moveset. Eventually, all the hard work paid off, and it finally clicked. I've been saying for the last few days that Ike is a bad character, but he kind of started clicking last night, and I don't know, I kind of like him now. While playing some Elite Smash off-stream, Ike actually became my best character. It took a lot more work than I expected to have a breakthrough with Ike. He has some glaring flaws, which made it difficult to do well with him in the beginning. However, because I was bad with him, it forced me to become better. I had to learn how to play around his flaws and abuse his strengths. But in order to know if Ike really was my best character, I still had to enter my local and see how I do under tournament pressure. But before we get to that, I want to show you a combo video I made, showcasing the best clips I got as Ike.
Yikes! That was not true, but it definitely worked. Can't spell yikes without Ike. Okay. Had to be careful. I know what Mewtwo's capable of. Woo! Let's go! Let's go, Ike! You know what Ike's capable of? Killing Mewtwo at 50. The Lumio's Doc. That's still hitting. Oh, I got that! Let's go. We like Ike. That's right. We know how to edgeguard minion. You have to jump and press A? It's insane. I know. We got combos? Yes! I'm crazy with it.
Ike Tournament Report. Going into this tournament, truthfully, I wasn't that nervous. Normally there's a lot of pressure on me to do well with the character of the week, and sometimes that pressure gets to me. But with Ike, I didn't feel that pressure. It's hard to say exactly why. Maybe it was because he was low tier. If I did bad with Ike, I could just say, well, he sucks, and move on to the next character. But it's more than that. I worked hard to make my Ike a good character. I studied, practiced, and experimented with him in a way that was different from other characters I've played. A week before the tournament, Ike was probably one of my worst characters, and I didn't even know that was the case. But by now, I knew Ike was my best character, and that he was my best chance of doing well at this week's local. This local ended up drawing a much larger crowd than usual. Our local hero main, Wander, is leaving on a religious mission, so we all got together for a send-off party. 52 people showed up for Wander, and I was the lucky player who got to fight him in round 1. Even though he broke my shield twice in the first game, I ended up taking it. However, a Kaboom at ledge wins a nail-biter game 2 for Wander. I wish I could say game 3 was close, but sometimes Hero just gets everything he wants. I went to losers round 1, but despite that, I was still feeling great. I laughed off the lucky game and was just happy to have a chance to play with Wander before he had to leave. But now it was time to do some work in the losers bracket. My next opponent was Iguana. After my set with Wander, I felt warmed up and was starting to hit the combos I'd been practicing. 2-0 win for me. Next round, I fought B1, a Steve main. With 80 characters separating Ike from Steve on the tier list, was there anything I could do? Actually, I think Ike wins the Steve matchup. Hear me out, but Steve does not like big swords. I learned that when I mained Steve a year ago. And even though Ike may have some serious flaws holding him back as a character, a big sword really just wins the game for you sometimes. Moving on in the bracket, I got to have a rematch against Yodu. Last time I fought him, I played Dr. Mario, and got smoked. However, after an incredibly close game 1, I managed to steal it. In game 2, Yodu has the lead for almost the entire game. But the thing about Ike is that he only needs a few hits to bring it back to even. It's looking like Yodu's game near the end, but I do what Ike does best and put a massive hitbox in between him and the stage. Because Ike is so heavy, as long as he can stay alive, you can clutch up with him. At this point, my Ike has already done as well as some of my best characters in the past, getting 3 wins in a tournament. But I'm still in bracket. I then got to fight Potatoicus, a Link main. Normally, my games with Potatoicus are pretty close, but after beating Yodu for the first time, I felt unstoppable. I can now officially say Ike is my best character, having won 4 sets in a tournament. I then had my biggest challenge for the tournament. I had to fight Mac, who is my friend, my coach, and is also a top 10 player in Utah. He's normally a Mii Brawler main, but he surprised me by locking in Sheik. Fighting this character online taught me that this has to be one of Ike's worst matchups. However, I surprised myself and won game 1. Max stuck with Sheik, so I stuck with my game plan, and before I knew it, the screen said game! At first it didn't feel real. I fist bumped him, and then was told I had made top 8. In my 5 years of playing competitive Ultimate, this was my first time ever making top 8 at one of my locals. I was ecstatic. I have been wanting this for years, and I had finally done it! With Ike of all characters, someone who I hated playing as at first. And even though I only took 1 game off of Jenks Wario in top 8, it was awesome to finally get to play best of 5 in a tournament bracket. I later learned that this tournament was actually off-season, which meant none of my wins counted, and it explains why Mac picked Sheik instead of Mii Brawler. But that didn't really matter to me. Being able to say I made top 8 was all I wanted.
Final results.
After a week of playing this character, failing miserably at the start, and putting in the work to make him better, now I can finally say, I like Ike. I initially expected Ike to be one of the easiest characters in the series. After all, he's just a big man with a big sword. No extra DLC mechanics, he's just a guy who fights for his friends. However, at first, his weaknesses were the only thing I noticed about him, and it was frustrating playing a character that just died so easily. But I'm so happy I pushed through it, and found a way to make Ike one of my best characters. The main thing I learned about Ike is that it's not hard to win games with him. The hard part about Ike is not losing. As long as you can avoid the parts of the game where Ike is bad, namely being off stage, Ike is kind of a good character. He outranges most of the cast, hits hard, and he has one of the best juggle states in the game. But with all that said, when Ike is bad, he's awful. Ike was a character that surprised me multiple times. He was more difficult than I expected, more nuanced than I believed him to be, and even though he's a low tier, he may just be one of my best characters. However, as much as I like Ike, I'm not even halfway through Ultimate's roster. If you'd like to choose my next character, consider joining my Patreon linked below. It's about time I return to my roots and become a member of Plant Gang again. Stay tuned to see how I do with Piranha Plant at Genesis X. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on Tuesday.